Got another custom for you guys this week. Welcome to Superhuman Customs. I'm Stephen Human. We're doing Aquaman, the movie version of Aquaman. Now, I'm not a big fan of the Aquaman movie. In fact, I absolutely hate it. I thought it was a steaming pile of crap. But the suit that they had in that movie was awesome. You know, the gold, the classic, but then turning it into a movie version. That was sweet. So what I'm gonna do with this, guys, we're gonna basically do that. We're gonna dry brush some gold on, some green. I wanna keep the textures. It's obviously a really dark suit. And so it's already gonna work really well for what I wanna do because I wanna have a lot of the details stand out. So I'm gonna dry brush it. Then we're gonna lighten up his hair a little bit. Not a ton because, you know, he wasn't blonde, but I want him to have just a lighter feel to it. I want him to look a little bit more classic Aquaman. So we're not gonna do a ton to that, but we are gonna do it. So let's turn this guy into a much cooler version of Aquaman. So I was gonna pull his head off and his hair actually came right off. So we're gonna have to glue that back in place. But we're just gonna pop his head off and then we are gonna start with the gold paint. Now the head's off, let's just go through and start dry brushing on this gold. Just getting a little bit on the brush is all, just a tiny little bit. And then just going over it. Because I wanna keep as much of the sort of textures in here as I can. Because there's already great textures. And so I don't need to go like full on gold throughout all of this. I want it to just look like this has been used. And in order to do that, we want to be able to see some of these, you know, the textures in here. We want those. So that's what we're going to do is just go through like this, hit all these up. It's nothing more difficult than that. So I'm just still going through here. Now what I've decided to do is once we've kind of got this gold in place, I will go through and highlight some of these areas and give a little bit more gold to them because I do want some things to stand out. But overall, this is looking pretty dang good. Just using a Vallejo gold, nothing more special than that. This is looking so cool. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go through some of these areas, some of these more raised areas, and just hit them with a thicker coat because everything's been really light. And so if I go through and do that on these areas, they are going to stand out. And that's what we want because he's got kind of the scale armor, right? And so we want some of these scales to be brighter. And so I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna hit just some areas like this. Just a little bit more. And then, whoops, and then it's gonna look more like brighter scales. So just, when you're doing this, go through and just hit some of these areas, just hit an edge or two with a thicker glob of paint. And it is gonna take you a little while, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with taking your time to do some cool stuff. And so just go back, get a dot, hit some of these scales, boom, boom, boom. And I promise you, I mean, you can already see it's making a difference. It will make all the difference in the world going through and doing this because it's going to catch the light differently. It's going to give you a bunch of textures that are really going to make this guy just look absolutely amazing. I'm also going through and I'm just hitting some of these lines, like right here, and adding an extra layer. And again, it's making a real huge difference because in real life, gold armor or scale, whatever it is that it would actually be, the areas that are touched would be brighter because no dirt would be able to collect in those areas. They'd be rubbed, whereas these areas in here would be dirty. So that's kind of what we're going for, is hitting these little edges and making them look just more shiny, more touched, and more real. The gold's looking really good. Want to do the same thing with the green. Oops. Want to just go over, nice and light. This is the perfect green. It's just a standard green from Vallejo. Nothing special about it. It's a little bit of a lighter paint, a little bit more watery, so you can move it around pretty good. And it's gonna do exactly what we want. Now, I'm not sure what to do with the boots. I'm not sure whether to green them up. I know that in the comics he has green boots, but I'm not sure if I want him to have green boots, so we'll see. This is a really good green for this because it's moving around really nicely, and it's not putting anything on it's not making the green too stark. What I've decided to do with the legs is that I am going to green them up, but I'm just going to dry brush so you can see it's just hitting the outer layer, so that these will have a green tint to them, but they will not be fully green. They will stand out from the pants. And I think that's going to give us a better look and make this character look just that much more sort of distinct, which is what I'm going for. I want it to look like it would be in the Justice League movie or in the Aquaman movie, but have it be, you know, a more classic version based off of this suit. And because down here is all very textured, I'm going to do the same thing I did up top, just with the green. I'm going to go through, I'm going to hit some of these areas and make them more green and make them look a little bit more ornate. And that's going to make this guy really pop. I'm loving all these textures. I was kind of assuming, oh, I'll just dry brush all this stuff. But as I went through with that gold and saw how good it looked, I'm like, I gotta do this everywhere. I gotta make it so that this looks like royal armor. And so some areas are gonna be more green and some less green, and some still have that more bronzish texture. I'm taking a slightly lighter green and I'm dry brushing it over the top of the darker green. And it's really adding a nice texture to it. So it's just a slightly lighter green, but it's, as you can see, it's lighting it up really nicely and just giving it even more texture. I'll put a little bit more of the dark over the top in some of these areas and it'll make them stand out a little bit more. So that's why I'm doing this. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through and I'm going to add some metallic green, like what we used on the Green Lanterns. And I'm going to hit these details here. I was originally going to use the darker green, but the more I thought about it, the more I was like, you know, I think this lighter green, because we started dark and we went lighter, and now we're going to go a little bit lighter still. I think that's going to give the very best contrast. So I'm just going to go through and hit the lines on these edges and just go through his legs, and then probably add a few other, like to the scales, kind of like how we did up here, just a few dots here and there. This is working out really nicely. This lighter green is highlighting beautifully, adding a little bit of metallic, and just making this figure look so awesome. I debated on what to do with the belt, on whether or not to make it a yellow. I've decided to go with the gold like everything else, but with this one I'm going to make it very bright. So I'm not going to make it as dull as the rest. I'm going to try and get it so that it just does have a really bright gold to it. Because then it's going to stand out from the armor, which is what I want. I don't want it to look the same. I want it to really stand out and be like, oh, okay, that's a different shade of gold. I never noticed this, but he has an A on the back too. I'll have to watch the next time I watch the movie and see. It's kind of weird that he has an A back there too. He really wants people to know he's Aquaman. The fact that his hair fell off is kind of fortuitous, honestly, because it's going to allow me to get into some of these areas without worrying about hitting his head, his face, so I can get these edges and stuff. Now I just want to go through and just add a little bit. Like, this is actually a little bit too much, so I'm going to wipe. Just want to lighten it up just enough to make it so that he is a little bit more blonde. That's it. And more on the edges like how it was in the movie. Same thing with the beard. Just a little bit here and there. And then wipe it. The yellow was a bit, I don't know, so I'm going to add just a little bit of white, just as little as I possibly can to some of these strands, just to lighten them up and make them look a little less green, because they kind of do have a greenness to them. So I'm going to go through and then dab. And hopefully that will add sort of the weathered, you know, like the sun-bleached look that he's kind of got in the movie, and have it not be quite so green. Because the yellow just with this brown really did turn out to be a little bit too green for my tastes. Hopefully that'll take care of it. And if you find that things are a little bit too bright for you in circumstances like this, feel free to take an X-Acto knife and just scratch right as it's starting to dry, and you can get rid of some of it and it'll blend it. It's almost like, I use Photoshop a lot, and it's kind of like in Photoshop when you put a layer on top of another layer and then you change the opacity a little bit. That's kind of what I'm doing here in the physical world. So I'm just changing the opacity on some of these so that they blend a little bit better and it's not quite so stark, and it ends up looking better. There you have it, your own classic movie, Aquaman. I'm really, really pleased with how the textures came out. Again, I thought that I was gonna just go straight gold and straight green, and it wasn't gonna be anything that was gonna be like, oh, this is visually appealing, but man, he turned out really striking, just using 3 different layers on the green, and then just the gold going up just slightly more and more until we were adding onto the scales and stuff. Man, this guy really pops now. He's gonna look great with the other movie figures. Try this. With some of these more texture figures, just remember, start dark, go light, and just make it look the way that you want it to look. And this guy looks awesome, just as I kind of envisioned him. The hair did not turn out as well as I would like, because the yellow did kind of have that green tint once it dried, but you know, you win some, you lose some. Get an Aquaman figure, get these movie figures, have fun with them, start customizing if you haven't, and have fun, because that's why we're here. I'm Stephen Human. Remember, check out StephenHuman.com for all of my sci-fi thriller novels. You will love them if you are a reader, and I will see you next week with another custom on Superhuman Customs.